Hello, my name is Amber. I am 24 years old and I am a registered nurse. I suffer from OCD, anxiety, and depression. OCD stands for obsessive compulsive disorder. Obsessions are when an individual constantly thinks about someone or something in a way that is not healthy. Compulsions are strong desires to perform certain behaviors in order to eliminate obsessions or thoughts. I would like to share some information with you in order to break the stigma associated with OCD. But first, I would like to tell you a little bit more about me and my history with obsessive compulsive disorder. I've had OCD for as long as I can remember. When I first realized that I was different than other kids, I was in elementary school. I would recite mantras. I strongly, irrationally believed in superstitions, and I couldn't let the ring finger of either hand be the last finger to touch something, such as one of my Barbie dolls or the drawer on my dresser. When I started driving, I would recite the colors that are painted on the blacktop, and I also recite the colors of signs in my head, such as a no U-turn sign. I would recite red, black, silver, and white because those are the colors that are associated with that sign. If I see an obituary or a cross on the side of the road, I feel the irrational need to pray. Um, for me, just any activity of daily living is difficult. Um, for instance, just turning on the fan in my bedroom, if a bad image comes into my head or a bad thought comes into my head, I have to turn that fan on and off until I have a good image or a good thought come into my head. Um, Being an RN and being a nurse educator, I like to research things and I like to share information. OCD is an anxiety disorder. Obsessions cause anxiety and compulsions are to eliminate the anxiety. For me, one of my obsessions is if I see something that is red on a piece of paper or a piece of clothing, I immediately think that that is blood. Um, I make up all these different scenarios in my head of how that could have gotten on there. And even if I were to walk by something that I would think is blood, I would question myself and say, did I touch that? I'm not sure if I did. Did I touch that? And then my compulsions would be to Germex or to wash my hands with antibacterial soap and water. And I wouldn't just do this one time. I wouldn't use the Germex once, and I wouldn't just use the soap and water once. For me, I might have to wash my hands 5 or 6 times, or 10 or 11 times the next time. My obsessive compulsive disorder, with my compulsions, I just have to feel right. I have to act out my compulsion until I feel good. But for some, they have to act out their compulsions a certain number of times or in certain sequences. Um, what if is constantly going through the mind of an individual with OCD. The mind races and it's a vicious cycle. For me, I might obsess about seeing red on a piece of paper all day long. And then I'll obsess about it a week from now. And then a month from now, I'll still think, what if that was blood on that piece of paper? That's kind of how anxiety plays a role in obsessive compulsive disorder. With long-standing OCD, depression is also associated. And for sufferers, obsessions and compulsions, they consume every single moment of each day. And oftentimes, the individuals with obsessive compulsive disorder feel isolated and alone. I always joke and say that OCD's twin is anxiety and their cousin is depression. For me, there have definitely been dark times where I have wanted to end my life, but then I couldn't bring myself to do it. And that has led to an obsessional fear of sharp objects. And for the longest time, I couldn't shave with my razor by myself. Um, The word obsession and even the term OCD are used out of context by individuals in society. I often hear of individuals with no education with mental illness or no background associated with mental health feel that we can just stop our behavior and move on in our lives. But OCD doesn't just go away. It's almost like having an angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder, with the devil always winning and the devil always being louder. I've also heard that being OCD is a good thing, that it's required for prevention and elimination of errors. But what many don't understand is that obsessive compulsive disorder is not something that is wanted, and it wreaks havoc. It's very detrimental for that individual, and they have to recount this, recount that, check this, don't say this number. I've also heard that individuals with OCD are just neat freaks. While symmetry does play a role in obsessive compulsive disorder, not everyone suffers from that type of obsessive compulsive disorder. There are many different types of obsessive compulsive disorder, not just intrusive thoughts, not just contamination issues. There are checking issues, checking compulsions. There are rituals. There are superstitious behaviors, among many other things. Um, I currently see a therapist, and I am in ERP therapy. ERP is exposure and response prevention. That's when the individual is exposed to the thing that is causing them to have anxiety. And when you're exposed to this thing, whatever it may be, for me, a couple weeks ago, we found a piece of paper that had red on it. So for me, that exposure was to touch the piece of paper and to not wash my hands, to touch that spot that I felt was dirty, and then to not wash my hands afterwards, because there really was no immediate threat with the red being on that piece of paper. Um, ERP is definitely scary, and it can make you feel very anxious in the moment, but it does get easier. I also take medication for my obsessive compulsive disorder. My message to society is to seek help for your mental illness. Mental illness should not be something that is deemed as negative, and the sufferer should not feel ashamed for having a mental illness. Um, I urge you, if you have OCD or if you know someone who has OCD, to seek guidance and contact a healthcare professional, because there are trained individuals that want to help you, and to know that you are not alone in this battle.